Fine, so tonight we're going to discuss what I like to call Judaism and the Coca-Cola culture. In order to do this, we need to introduce a certain concept in Kabbalah called klipa. And klipa literally in Hebrew means a peel or a shell, but let's understand Kabbalistically what this means, because this is all going on in our life, in ourselves, right? And what we mean here is that what a peel or a shell does is it's something that comes in the way of us getting to the goal. It's something that comes in the way of us getting to the fruit, to the nut, to the thing that we want. But it also gets its entire life, entire energy, entire vitality from the goal, right? The shell and the peel both get their entire life force from the fruit or the nut itself. And this is a concept in Kabbalah that's very much inherent in all of our lives, right? We have a certain inner aspect of ourselves that we call a soul. And to get into the depths of what a soul is a great topic, but perhaps for another time. But for right now, we have this concept of soul, and its goal and yearning is to build that which life is all about, to build that which is truly meaningful, to build the ultimate, to build a relationship with the infinite, a relationship with God. However, what happens often is that despite the fact that the soul wants to go and build that which is meaningful, you'll have in life certain things that usurp that energy of the soul that yearns for something grander, yearns for something meaningful, and takes it off into all sorts of other directions, right? So like, for example, anyone here ever build a comic book collection, right? So you might have built a comic book collection, or a sticker collection, or a stamp collection, or a baseball card or basketball card collection, right? Now, where does it come from in the human being to build collections? Think about it. Where do you feel? Matter of fact, just look at the fact that human beings will gather a comic book collection, but you will never see a cow making a comic book collection. That's never going to happen, right? And so anytime we see human beings having an interest in something that animals don't have an interest in, grab onto that, because it's a sign that that thing is rooted in the difference between a human being and an animal, right? And that's the concept of the human soul, right? And that's the thing. We share what the animals have. We share the concept of the body, the physical, and our conditionings and our instincts and inclinations. We have that just like the animal does, right? More or less. But what separates us from the animal is that concept of the human level, the human soul. And so if you see human beings that are interested in things that animals are not interested in, grab onto that, because that's a good indicator that that thing is rooted in the difference between a human being and an animal, rooted in the soul. So something like the comic book collection, think about it. What do you feel when you go ahead and are building the comic collection? Try to think back to that. Try to put yourself there, right? Right? So you feel a certain sense of accomplishment, a certain sense of fulfillment, a certain sense of like almost meaningfulness, right? A certain sense of building, right? Well, can you hear the idea that there's a certain something rooted in the soul based on that? Because again, what's the soul all about? It's about building the ultimate. And oftentimes that gets usurped into all sorts of other directions. Right? Let me give you an example of an extreme case. Right? A number of years ago, there was a big round of applause and a standing ovation for a certain individual in a Geneva hotel. What did this individual do? He had just made a bid, the record-breaking bid in an auction, right? No one had ever bid on such a high bid as this guy bid in this auction. Over $46 million. On what did he bid this, you might ask? Well, he bid it on a rare diamond. It was pink. And guess whose record this guy broke when he bid this $46 million bid? That's right, his own. Right? A few years ago, this same character had bid $34 million on a different rare gem, a rare stone, a rare pebble. Right? And so, can you hear the idea that this banker who made this bid, both of these bids, $100 million just on these two stones, and obviously this guy had more than just these two. He was trying to build a special collection of rare gems and stones and diamonds. Can you hear the idea that it's not just about investment purposes? It's not just about living with a couple of added comforts in life. Can you hear the idea there's something more that he's trying to get to, something more that he's trying to attain, some other feeling that he's getting, something else he's getting from this? Can you hear the idea that he's, in a certain respect, looking for a name for himself, looking for eternity, looking for a lasting legacy? And he's chasing this in the form of diamonds and rare gems, right? But can you hear the idea? There is no amount of stones, boulders, gems, pebbles that will ever replace the true fulfillment of growing into the reality of who you are, of building that which is ultimately meaningful. And so that's the thing. People say, well, hold on a second. Maybe that's relatively meaningful to him. And that's fine. I don't deny that. I don't fight with that. That's true. Who can argue? If it's relatively meaningful to him, it is relatively meaningful to him. But what we're saying here is when you put relatively meaningful up against objectively meaningful, we come to see that relatively meaningful isn't really all that meaningful, right? It does give us a certain nice flavor, etc., but it falls short of the real thing, right? And so this is really what I wanted to talk to you about this evening because, and this is why I call it Judaism and the Coca-Cola culture, right? Because Coca-Cola is that prime example of something that likes to make itself to be something important, right? Matter of fact, I think in the 1990s there was an advertisement campaign. One of the slogan for Coca-Cola was always the real thing. Here you have Coca-Cola calling itself the real thing. It's got to be the biggest joke, right? Coca-Cola is probably the stereotypical example of an artificial product, calling itself the real thing. And the truth is, though, it's very indicative of the culture that we're in, how much it's manipulated by branding and advertising and marketing. Very indicative of the culture that we're all being raised in. But as we get in touch with hopefully a deeper side of ourselves, as we get in touch with who we really are, who we could really be, what's really going on in this world, hopefully these things start to be seen in their proper light, right? That they can be enjoyable things, but not really what it's all about. I'll give you an example. When I was growing up, and I had some Jewish background, but any time I ever heard about Judaism was a lot about the what's of Judaism and the how's of Judaism. What to do, how to do it, but like why on earth should I be involved in this? Why on earth might I care? Why on earth might it make a difference in my life? Some of those whys were always passed over. And so growing up, this bothered me. And so when I had the opportunity, I wanted to check some of this Jewish stuff out for myself. If I find something real there, so I'll pursue it further. If not, who knows? Maybe I'd peace out for good. So sure enough, I come to Israel, start searching things out. This starts off as a philosophical pursuit, but ultimately evolves something a little more personal, a little more spiritual, a little more deeper side of Judaism. And that really puts me where I am now, right? But as I went ahead and developed a certain deeper understanding about what it's all about. So I was spending a serious amount of time in Israel, and I went back to visit in America where I grew up, and a friend of mine says to me, hey, I got a couple of Yankee tickets, would you like to join me for the game? I say, sure, why not? So I go with him to the Yankee game, and there I am sitting in the stands, and it's in the 8th inning, right? And there's 2 outs, Yankees are down by 1 run, and there's 2 runners on base. The Yankee that's at bat gets a hit. The ball rolls all the way back to the wall. 1 run comes in to score, tying the game. And here comes another run for the lead. Coming in, here comes a play at the plate. The entire stands gets up, stands up. Everyone cheering, looking, what's going to be? And I'm just sitting there looking around saying, this has got to be the most pathetic excuse for something meaningful that's ever been invented. Because where does the yearning, the flavor, the joy of sports really come from within a person? Can you hear the idea that they are, in a certain respect, attributing meaningfulness to something that's objectively not meaningful? As a matter of fact, what's the words for people who root for a particular team? We call them the what of that team? Right? The fans of the team. And fan is short for fanatic, right? And so if you think that's exaggerated, by the way, it's not exaggerated at all. We've heard of people getting killed. We've heard of referees getting killed for making a certain call, in certain sports at least, right? And so this is not even an exaggeration. As a matter of fact, I saw an article a little while ago in which it described how there was a certain fan of the Pittsburgh Steelers, an NFL football team, that he was living in New Hampshire. He never got to a game in Pittsburgh. But he would always sit there ritually on his little lazy boy with his Pittsburgh Steelers blanket. And then one day, tragically, he passed away. And his wife took his ashes in an urn and went to Pittsburgh to take him to his first Pittsburgh Steelers game. The first time he's able to see the Pittsburgh Steelers play in person, if you could call it that, right? So now if you're going to be Jewish, you're going to ask me, well, did he pay for the ticket? Did he not pay for the ticket, right? Now, I don't know exactly if he took up a seat or not. But the point here in the story is, it's pretty wacky, right? You might be saying, now hold on a second, that's just an extreme case. That's an extreme example. Well, I have news for you. Recently, they just came out with a line of caskets and urns that you could purchase because, and as the advertisement went, some people have claimed that they would die for their team. Would you? Think about it. What's supposed to be on a casket, right? And they're making this now. That means they've done the business research and they know that they're going to make a profit off it, right? So what goes on a casket? What do you put, not on a casket, but what do you put on a tombstone, right? When you try to put, what is this person all about? What did they personify? What was their role here? What did they come here in the world and accomplish, right? Pittsburgh Steelers, right? It's crazy. So this means to say that there's a certain energy within us that actually goes to these things, right? That you really, what it's all about is it yearns upward. We yearn for the max. We yearn for the goal. We yearn for what our soul is really all about. But oftentimes we will take a more shallow, tangible alternative, and I don't mean shallow in a negative way, but a more surface-oriented alternative to that because it's more easily acceptable. So we'll accept a flavor of the goal without actually getting to the goal because it's more easier to attain. You see this all over life, right? Imagine, go to a rock concert, and you see in the rock concert, you know, that time the slow song comes on, everyone busts out their lighter. Right now they take out their phone, right? And what are people accomplishing when they do that? Feeling a part of something. They are a unique aspect which would not exist there if it wasn't for them, but they're greater than themselves because they're a part of something whole. They're part of something bigger, right? There's something in a person that's yearning for that, right? Give you another example. If you've ever watched a commercial from the NFL football, right? Well, how does the commercial go? It's like this grand music, like a symphony orchestra in the background. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 right? Like this music of ascendance. And then you see some guy throwing slow motion, a spiral in the air, another guy catching it. A thing of beauty, right? But really, what are we seeing here? What are we connecting to here? There's certain coming together of each individualistic part is coming together for some common greater whole, right? Really, the truth is, this is what the Messianic era, according to Judaism, is all about. That to reveal the inherent oneness and godliness behind all the different parts and aspects of multiplicity. Right? Essentially what the NFL is selling us is a God experience, a Messiah, Mashiach experience, and they're selling it in the form of football. Well, that's going to get us. That's going to get us almost every time. Right? And so this is the idea really of Judaism and the Coca-Cola culture. And so the question is, okay, so where do we go from here? The answer is, well, we should understand that, and by the way, let's be clear, I'm not saying that there's something wrong with sports. That's not true. I'm not saying there's something wrong with a rock collection or comic book collection. Point is, though, if we stop there and replace our true goal and value and what we could truly attain, replaced by a few shiny rocks and a sports team, that's a tragedy. Right? And so the idea is that when we experience that high of the Super Bowl, or that high of that sports team, that high of when we've built a muscle empire, a beer can collection, comic book collection, when we feel that good feeling, we should understand that's a flavor, that's an aspect, that's what the Talmud would call 1/60th, a taste of what it will really be like when we go ahead and apply ourselves, when we go ahead and clarify who we really are, what we're really here for, what our life's all about, what's truth in the world, what's our place in it, and we go ahead and pursue that with a passion and build in that direction. That's going to be so much more. And so this is the story of really what Judaism is trying to get us to, right? What we mean by the concept of Torah is that the Torah is from the Hebrew word mora, which means teacher, because Torah is teachings. Teachings for what? Teachings for life. meaning to say it is the original book of how do we go ahead and live out our fullest potential. It is the original self-help book, spiritual self-help book. And to the extent we go ahead and open it up and look into it and clarify it and start to live it in our lives, start to go into the fullest expression of who and what we can be here in this world. So I want to bless us today to go ahead and to do that and to live that and to investigate in that. And when we feel the high and the immediate rush of sports and all these things, to understand that this is just a prelude, that's the pregame show to going ahead and living out who and what we can be and what our life is really all about.